Okay, wanted to do a quick Bandleader 101 in response to a clip I saw. I actually did a remix of this. I'm not very good at doing remixes, and you'll see, even I know, I didn't do it quite right, the way that people most enjoy, but hopefully the point came through. It's of Isaac Solo, which is a duo. These brothers, older brother plays guitar, younger brother who's maybe 9 or 10 years old plays drums. Both really talented. The music's really happening, funky, tight, very fresh. A lot of fun. This was one in which it was a little rehearsal breakdown, and something like this. And as you'll see in the clip, if you go check out the clip first. So, guitarist, the older brother, who's kind of the band leader, starts playing this funky groove. Drummer's listening to it, letting it go through one time, picks it up, locks in, enters tastefully, has a tasty idea that is supportive and tasteful, and I thought, oh, that's very nice. But the guitarist did not. Well, no, stop. And now he's, no, you can't do it like that. It can't be, it can't be this way, it's got to be that way. And then I felt the poor drummer does this little face plant at the end, and I'm like, dude, I feel your face plant. Been there. And everything he did was fine. Everything he did was a good choice. If I'd been the guitarist and this was a drummer sitting in with me, I'd be like, oh, we are off to the races. This kid's got good ideas. It doesn't even need to be a kid to be impressive. It was impressive for any age. This drummer's got good ideas. This drummer's got what it takes. So, anyway, but that happens all the freaking time in bands. I'm sure that if you've been in a band, you've probably seen some version of that happen. And I want to talk about kind of the breakdown of this sort of bossy micromanagement that is very common but not very effective. How to do it a little bit better. Why it's not going to work in the long run. What coaching is, because a lot of band leaders think that's coaching. What coaching really is, and the limit of what it can accomplish, and the oft neglected piece of general management, general managership. In other words, the selection of your players for a more specific set of skills that you actually identify that you require. So, let's talk about this one. In any band, you got to recognize, as the band leader, what's in it for these players. What's in it for the other members. I know what's in it for me. This is my vehicle for my songs, or for my idea of having a band, or whatever. What's in it for the players? So for most of us, it's not a big sack of money, right? Like, for most of us, we're not like looking at hired guns who got paid a bunch of money to do it exactly like that. But I've been a hired gun for not even that much money. So I'll tell you what it's like and how that changes my attitude. So when I'm like I'm filling in for someone and I'm being paid, and it's like it's at my number, my attitude changes, because what's in it for me is being paid. And at that point, when someone stops and wants to like have me play something specific, they paid for that privilege, and I'll do that. I'll take notes and do the best I can to deliver what they're after. We're going to kind of put paid aside, because that's really not what we're talking about with most bands. With most bands, what's in it for the players is the opportunity to play. Sounds basic, but what does that really mean? It means the opportunity for my voice to be heard, for my voice to be part of the conversation. I'm the drummer in this band, and I decide how it goes. I decide, I get to play drums. I get to speak, have my voice be there. I'm the guitarist in this band, and I get to, when I take a guitar solo, it's my thing. I'm the bassist in this band, and I decide. you know, what that bass part's going to be like, how it's going to feel. When you're not giving people a big sack of money as a band leader, you got to recognize, like, you got to give them some autonomy. You got to let the players play, because that's the currency that you are giving them, is that opportunity. And so when you micromanage and start to take some of that away and start to dampen that, then you shouldn't be like amazed and wondering, how come my drummers keep quitting? Is it because that you know, they came in with a tasty idea and you went, oh, no, not like that. So that's something to consider, is that micromanagement starts to diminish the currency of what you're offering to these players, and so that's the risk. So a lot of times band leaders think they're coaching, but if you don't play drums as well as me, it's really unlikely that you've got a lot to coach me on. What is actual coaching? Doesn't mean you can't. What is actual coaching, though? Coaching is that you have this player, right? And they have a particular set of skills, and they're kind of like this good at overall. And through a little bit of guidance, a little bit of teaching, you either add an extra skill, or you sort of raise the level of these one or more of these skills a little bit through some specific targeted guidance, right? That means you have to know what you're talking about, which it doesn't mean you necessarily have to play the instrument to be able to provide some coaching, but there's probably a limit to how much better you can make the person and how great your coaching is. So, like, someone could coach me to throw a better spiral, because I don't throw a great spiral, but so someone could actually say, hey, you, with your pinky, grab the lace right here, and then see, that's going to improve it, maybe. But they can't make me be John Elway. You can't coach me all the way up. You just can't, because I don't have, that's way too far. I think we all can see that. The way that you probably should be delivering this kind of, so one way that you can give, this is not to say you can't give feedback and that you can't, like, identify a problem and offer a solution, but there's a way to do it. And I kind of talk about it, you know, in sort of rehearsals. So an example of something that would be legitimate, was not in this particular clip, but would be legit, is to say something like, I really like what kind of where you were headed and the ideas that you had there. However, this song I'm feeling is a shuffle, and I really need it to be a shuffle, and you're playing it straight. I don't think that we can meet in the middle. I think we need to get on the same page about that shuffle feel. But can you try taking some of those ideas that you were doing and just kind of refeeling them as a shuffle? Can we try that and see where that goes? That's an example of some feedback which is hopefully respectful, has a point, you know, it comes from a logical, valid place. You're making a suggestion that makes sense but still respects what this player's bringing to the table. I like your ideas. Can we repurpose those ideas, feel them slightly differently, and try that again? And that if this is in front of the whole band, doesn't come across as you're chewing out that player, that you're being mean or disappointed or angry in your criticism. There's a problem here. In my estimation, there's a problem here. I need us to stop and I need to talk about that problem. Here's what I think the problem is. Here's what I think we should try to do to solve it. And I'm trying to give you as much as possible of sort of the middle ground to keep your ideas. The general management part over here would be that when you are, because a lot of bands audition players and they're just looking for someone who's like tall enough to ride the ride. They're good enough. Oh, you can play drums. You're a good drummer. You can be in our band. When you do that, you're accepting me as who I am. You're accepting me with my voice. And if you then say, yeah, but we really want a punk drummer, guess what? You should have been selecting for that. You know? Because I can play punk, but I don't want to, and didn't want to join a punk band. I'll do it, I'll fill in and get a little money to play a gig that you have where you need a sub, and I'll do that for sure. But that's not like what I want as my creative outlet for myself. Nothing wrong with being a punk drummer. There's a lot of people who love doing that. There's people who don't want to be in my band and be playing jazz rock. And similarly, there's a limit to, even though I know what I'm talking about, there's a limit to what I can do to like teach people styles that they don't know yet. Like if you don't arrive here knowing how to swing, how to shuffle, if you don't arrive here knowing how to play in 7, if we're playing in 7, if you don't know kind of how to do what it feels like when I'm playing like a samba or a bossa kind of feel, if you don't like have some ideas about how that's going to go, there's only so much I can do to coach you into that, and there's probably only so much desire you have to do a whole bunch of stuff that you weren't interested in to this point, right? There can be situations in which you do, but that's where you want to select for somebody who already has those skills. You need to know that your audition needs to check for that, check for those things. That also needs to be really open about, this is what we're ultimately looking to do. Hopefully it's going to shine through. So, in summation, you got to let your players play. Like that's the currency. That's what they're here for. That's what they're getting out of this whole band. So whenever possible, let the players' ideas, let them run with their ideas, with their voice. Unless there's a good reason that you have to stop it and come to some kind of compromise. And be open to compromise. Phrase things as, I like that, but can you start smaller? Is like in that clip, that would be like if I were in the situation and I had the reaction that the guitarist did to what that drummer did. First, I'd have to respect that was a legitimate choice. Can you start smaller and then build to that? That would be a way to preserve that you respect what they did. You have an idea that for your reasons you want to go that way. So you got to let the players play. You're going to get a limited benefit out of some targeted coaching if you actually know what you're talking about. But if all you ever do is just like poke people until they do what you want, they're going to quit. Like if you don't know how to express the coaching, don't try to be a coach and accept that's a limitation that you got to work on. You got to know what you're talking about to be able to coach people up. You got to be right, or at least legit. And then identify what you really want, the ideal facets that you're looking for, and select for them, test for them. Be open about them. Let people self-select. All right, so, till next time, take it easy.